But with that, what should we move on to next? Should we talk about got the Infinite Eva controversy? You got that, and then we got
Yeah, sure.
then we'll talk about that, and then talk about how
you can just do like the rules, some of the rules in general.
Oh, that's fine.
Like,
yeah,
I think that's a lot
Oh
of it.
yeah,
It's like
that's a,
Ava with symbols with everything.
yeah,
So,
that's fine. Go ahead.
Chaining.
Yeah, go ahead, Rob. You want to start us off with that?
Sure. So, I guess like Ava to the side a bit. I know. So like we talked about the stream, and I know for me, because I didn't make it to the U.S. Nationals this year. I went to UK, and then when I was like, "Hey, what's up, guys? Like, trying to get out of work like next month," and we were just absolutely crushed at work. And I was like, I just took like a week and a half off. I don't really think I can take more time right now and maintain employment. So I'm gonna skip this one. And I was watching the stream of the finals, and I actually like noticed one of the when Dan Hughes like formed down alpha, or not formed, but enhanced down alpha male, and I was like, I thought that followed like chaining, and pulled up the cards on Ultra because it's easy to do when you're already on your computer, and I was like, oh, it does say like normally play, and pull up like the LGR, and normally play is defined as like observing the symbol chain of the cards in your pool. And I just sort of commented on the in the chat log or whatever, and I said, well, that's not like a legal play. I said, if because he's got a void chain in his pool right now, if he like plays the enhance on rain flush and pulls out the slaughterhouse, I said it's fine. So it's not like he's really like horribly breaking the game. It was just, for me, it was more just like he messed up the order of his enhances, and like the chat kind of was like blowing up, and then like the stream went down, and all of us are sitting there like, what's going on? And I was like, oh, like Dan just won. I'm like, okay, whatever. Like, and as I said, I mean, even just watching that, like, that wasn't like it totally like just killed. I was like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. Like, literally, all he had to do was do two enhances in a different order, and everything would have been fine. It wasn't a big deal. But then I guess like what followed, like that was sort of more off-putting to me, is that the reaction to it was sort of that this idea of, oh well, that's not how that, or like that it was ruled like, oh no, it works like normally play, is just that it shares a symbol with your character.
Yeah, so the on the ground at Nationals,
can I sidebar this real fast?
Yeah, go ahead.
So on that, if you, and I'll toot my own horn a little bit, if you look at my character and the way that my form is worded, it is worded very specifically to get around that resource restriction, right? Like, so if he screwed up his enhanced chain and couldn't normally play that card, then okay, that's a problem. I wasn't there for any of that controversy. I don't really know what's going on as far as that went. So I'll defer to you guys as far as this one is concerned. Yeah, like symbol chaining has always been a thing, right? Like normally played, when it relates to stuff in the card pool, you've got to follow it start to finish, right? Like that's never not been a thing in UFS. So when even if you're using like enhances or forms to kind of circumvent that a little bit, if it's normally played, you still have to chain. So yeah, what was the fall? Like, you guys are gonna have to bring me up to speed a little bit. Like, what was the fallout from this? Like, where did this go horribly awry?
So it went horribly awry when it meant, I mean, to put not too fine a point upon it, when it met Shane Duckworth said, here was the ruling on the floor, and here's what we were running with. This was my understanding, and this is what it was. And
so what?
The community didn't necessarily agree that that's how things ought to work, but nothing really concrete, as far as I know, has come out of it.
Well, so I guess like the thing is what they've talked about now is that they're gonna like do away with the chaining, and normally play will just mean that it shares a symbol with your character. And it's kind of one of those things where it's like, it's okay if you guys just say like, we botched that ruling and it's unfortunate, but we don't think that in that specific instance it really mattered, because of the fact that it like could have been like, I don't think, like, here's the thing, that didn't change the outcome of the game.
No.
Like
Not
there was
at all.
like
Well,
nothing.
I mean, honestly, if you play that enhance and it's ruled correctly, then he doesn't get to put the cards in play that he puts in play.
Yeah.
Like just because just because like he should have played correctly and he could have done it if he played correctly, doesn't
Right.
mean that he gets off scot free from screwing up his sequencing. You know?
No, but I'm saying like I don't think it sort of undermines like the integrity of that outcome, if that makes sense. Like I don't think that it's like I'm trying to like I'm sure there is like
I mean, like
some world
judge
that-
mistakes can happen, right?
But,
and
right.
you can't like flip out and blow away the tournament because of a judge mistake.
if you just
Right.
say like moving forward, it's going to be like this way. But I know Chris was at another tournament and like they kind of doubled down on that. They were like, no, Athena can put in anything, and it's like that's not what your rules say. And
It's weird. Yeah. I've definitely been out of the loop on this. So fair enough. Because I know I've always played Athena, and I'm sure you guys have too. Because I've played her a bunch, especially when she was originally released, and went all of the nonsense with her being really broken for like a couple seasons. Where thank you, Broberg.
Good times.
Like you had to very carefully if you're going to off symbol stuff. Like you got to be real careful with your sequencing. Like it's in my mind that's no different than like I off symbol revoke in decks all the time. Right. And I make sure that I cater my blocks to work with it. I make sure that I cater my attack base to work with it and so on and so forth. Right. So if I need to use it like late in a chain in an emergency, then I can. And if I pigeonhole myself to where I can't chain a block, like I don't see how that's any different than using an enhance like that. That's kind of doing a very similar thing where like technically it doesn't hit the card pool either way, sure, but you still have to follow the chaining restriction.
I can very easily imagine a case where if someone played a revoke off chain and we could be having the same conversation if it was on stream. No one at the tournament noticed it, and I don't know, someone came up with a ruling that because it never hit the card pool, you didn't have to.
That doesn't.
You didn't have to do something. That is not true.
Right.
But I can imagine this mapping onto that cleanly. If the let's say the judge is in Shane Duckworth, it's some let's say this is an Arkansas PTC and we have an Arkansas native judge, and he says if you out of your league, you don't have to chain because of X, Y, or Z, and he rules that it's on stream, and he doubles down. We could be having the same conversation about it.
Sure.
Except that
very similar set of
official Jasco games.
Right.
And also it can be very easy to miss that kind of thing in the moment. Like I'm pretty sure I have played revokes off chain before.
I know I have.
Yeah, like it's
100%. I've fucked that up.
Easy thing to miss. I think that's why UFS's rules that the symbol restriction is kind of it's kind of easy to slide beneath your notice.
Yeah,
especially when there's a lot going on, and it's especially when you're watching your opponent do it with cards that you're not intimately familiar with.
I mean, part of it too is just obviously for those of us watching on the stream, like we don't necessarily have some of the like tunnel vision that comes with just playing. And so, like, you can just sit there and you got, like, what, 40, 50 people, maybe more watching the stream. It's like one of them is just going to be like, wait a minute. Like, that doesn't work.
Yeah, but like, on the same token, that's on the judges, right? Like, that's on them to get that call right. So if they screw up the call, like, okay, that happens, just like you guys have been saying, then, all right, then you move on and you get it right the next time. Like, I don't really see what the big deal is here. Like, Is the eventual fallout from this like no you can just start like dumping stuff in randomly off symboling because you happen to share symbols on a character like
the rules have been extremely slow to change. We do not know what the quote unquote right answer is.
I mean there've been in that sort of vein, I mean there've been I think 3 or 4 cards so far Spoiled and Bebop that use the phrase normally play. So like that's definitely going to be a question moving forward.
Right.
And I know like so sort of to that end, the part that really got to me, and like this is something that, I'm not necessarily totally unbiased about. In the discussion of this ruling that they were talking about what they're gonna do with normally play and whatnot. It was sort of announced unceremoniously as sort of a, oh, by the way.
Oh, the zero symbol.
They're thinking about possibly like adding something to the rules where you can't include cards in your deck that don't share a symbol with your starting character.
That's insane.
Which does, I mean, I guess like I've seen a lot of people that are just like, oh, I didn't even know you couldn't do that, or that you could do that. And this gets me because I just won a tournament in Rockford where I did this, and I was using Mysterious Mr. X to just bounce into my staging area and destroy Breaking Bread. And it cleared a card, got me a little bit of momentum. It was cool. And I mean, the thing is I only did one. Scott was doing similar things, but he was also running Glacial Assault and Hi-Fi Stereo.
Yep.
And for me, I was a little more defensive of a deck, and I had some of those cards in there, and I was like, dude, every time I draw an opening hand that has like Breaking Bread and Hi-Fi Stereo in it, like I just want to die.
You're trading off like some really good tech to early game consistency, right? Like I don't really see that that's a problem going forward. Like, okay, another example would be like Ben's character, right?
Literally any character can play Artifice Avarice with a straight phase.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You can run that. You can run like Ben was running Balance Fighters in his deck. There's no way to play it, right? Like you just charge his ability. So, and anything with a discard cost could potentially be running it. I don't really see that as a problem. I don't see why that's an issue.
So it's an issue because Shane and Jason apparently see it as an issue that Ken and Sakura can do that with Balance Fighter. They think that's inappropriate.
So you have basically like a card that is dead in your hand otherwise that you can feed to a character ability. Like that's really not that big a deal, right? Like, yeah, you get some upside out of it, and that's really nice. But like, if I'm playing against one of those characters and they rip double Balance Fighter in their opener, I'm like, great,
yeah, exactly,
cool,
you got me.
Good job. I get to run you over because you're only building one or two. Like, sure. Like, I don't really see that as a problem. If you want to dilute your deck's consistency and increase its like spike in power level when you pull this combo off, then cool. Like, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Like, that's an interesting deck design decision that you have to make as a player. Like, I don't really see a problem with that. Is it a little bit more confusing? Sure, kind of, but like, honestly, like a newer player that's just getting brought into UFS in the first place, right? That's not going to be where their brain goes in the first place. That's a pretty advanced level of deck building where it's like, okay, I have this card that is literally chaff otherwise, but I get great upside out of it when I can use this thing that interacts with it in this kind of unique way. Like, that should be rewarded. That should be something we're encouraging as a game, I think, right? Like, I want off the wall, like wacky, weird crap like that to be something that people are considering playing because that's more interesting.
Yeah, like 6 months ago when we were first coming out, when we first kind of came up with the idea of the Mysterious Bread combo of using Mysterious Mr. X to put these in, it wasn't clear that those worked in the rules because you obviously add it to your staging area, but then you immediately destroy it. Do you get the chance to play a response between those two things? And the answer is yes, because kind of that's just how UFS works. Like, take small atomic stats. But it wasn't clear if that would work or not. And I think, like, to segue a little bit into the do you want to change the rules to fixed cards discussion, we really thought that Mysterious Master X might get that treatment where they would virtually errata this interaction out of existence using the rules, with specifically Breaking Bread. But there was go ahead.
The thing about it is, like, if you're looking at an offender in that combo, it's Mr. X. Like, literally, all you have to do is take Mysterious Mr. X and just say a card you could normally play.
Right.
And it still works with all of the Wily stuff, which is what it was designed to do. And you could still run some of these other things. It's just that you would have to observe the chain. So you couldn't necessarily do something that you... Like, if that's what they're... Like, especially for that specific card, if the thing that's, like, annoying you is that people are using cards that don't share a symbol with their character, then just the effect should have said that shares, that normally play. That's taking what can be an easy Band-Aid fix of a snapperetta on a card, basically. Like, you don't need to restructure how UFS works in order to do that. Like,
absolutely. I was going to say that pretty much. When you're in this kind of situation, and I'm glad they've kind of they've held their fire on this. That they haven't changed the rules to fix any card interactions recently, at least. If maybe they've never done this actually, but there's this interaction, and there's also an interaction with Ava with Rekka Shinken, where you can get an arbitrarily large number of keywords by gaining the technical sphere enhance, and then gaining the technical sphere enhance again over and over again.
Copying it a bajillion times.
And then Rekka Shinken gives you +1 damage for each keyword on the card. This is the Infinite Ava combo. Your attack gets an arbitrarily large number of damage and kills your opponent in one hit, even if they partially block or whatever. So there's conversation that maybe we should change the rules such that you cannot gain like the charge keyword more than once, and then Rekka Shinken will just deal like +7 damage or whatever, because copying technical sphere won't add more keywords. And I kind of, when I talked to Shane or Jason about this, I stressed I think that's a terrible idea. They should, if they need to fix this, they should just ban or errata cards directly. Leave the rules the way they are, and that's a better way to go. And that seems to be what they have generally chosen. That's the path they've generally selected.
Couldn't you just fix it? I mean, change it by just saying it just can't copy itself?
Yeah.
And just leave it
copy a card not named technical.
Yeah, and then it's done.
Yeah, there's ways to patch that if they really want to. But again, I'm never a fan of just restructuring. I think we're all kind of in the same boat here. Like, I don't think any of us are fans of restructuring the rules to fix what, in the grand scheme of things, are very minor, what they're perceiving as issues, right? Like, the Ava combo, like, is it good? Sure, it's pretty good, right? Like, if you're not holding mids against that character, you just have the chance of just getting punked. It happened to me at Nationals. Like, I got dunked by that deck.
The best is when you draw your hand and don't have any mids.
And you're just holding your breath for like another full turn cycle, just praying that your opponent doesn't hit the combo.
Honestly, out of the fire and the evil builds of that deck, I think the best card is Combustion Orb, because it's a 4 mid 10 stun 3.
Stun a billion, that's pretty okay.
Like, it doesn't even matter if they have technical spam. Like, you're just
and then you just cancel their R hate. Yeah, no, that thing is awesome.
I literally just died to double Combustion Orb. It's like, I have 19 vitality to start the game. You got me.
All right, fair enough. Yeah,
I have a +3 block and it failed. Oops.
So like piles of damage anyway. That deck has its own issues just because of consistency, right? Like, you're not always going to hit that combo. I'm not going to say you're putting all of your eggs in that basket, because there's enough card quality in those symbols that, like, you can put attack chains together and so on and so forth.
See, you're not necessarily putting all your eggs in one basket.
No.
So I think there's the 60 card evil build with a pile of negation is kind of eggs in one basket.
That's eggs in one basket. Yeah. I'm looking at more like the fire list, right? Which I think is probably the better of the two. I don't know. I don't have a huge problem with that deck. It's just one of those things you have to plan around, right? Like, and honestly, I'll segue slightly into some of the newer stuff that we've seen out of Bebop. Like, if you're not putting damage resets in your deck right now as a UFS player, you are in for a rough day.
Yes.
You need somebody to deal with like arbitrarily large attack values. Like, you need something to do to handle that. Like, so I don't know.
Before we go into Bebop and other things for the later half of the year, I kind of want to take a step.
Can I just do one more? Like, to sort of cap that off, I was talking to. No, I'm going to do it.
My show.
I am a co-host.
Oh, it's true.
You will be quiet. I was actually talking to Garrett about this, because he had said something, and I was a little disappointed actually when he was talking about like the no symbol. He's like, "Well, I've never done that." And I was like, I mean, Garrett, we can't all be you. Winning a million characters.
Listen,
whatever.
Some of us liked playing Piercing Hail.
Like, if I want to like mess up the consistency of my deck a little bit to chase like some fun, that could be up to
by all means.
Do it, man.
You're playing within the rules. You're well within your rights to do that. 100%.
I guess about the rules. There was like the reversal thing at Nats. There's been a lot of sort of rules-based issues this year. And
that's another one,
Really, what it boils down to is it's Jasko's game. It's like Jason, Shane, like they work there. They can sort of determine the rules as they see. But if they want to kind of move away from like the current document, like the LGR that we've sort of been using for the past couple of years, they need to kind of just do it, and they need to do it all at once. They need to replace it with whatever they want it to be and make it pretty clear. It's sort of something where it's like, it can change. It just needs to like pretty much happen. And like, it can't sort of be this as you go.
Yeah, we can't piecemeal it.
Yeah.
So
Like, and
I think that's fair. Like,
it's kind of something too where it's like just the reasons for it. If you think like, well, this is better for like having people learn the game, if this makes more sense as a whatever, like that's okay. But I guess like if the perception is like we don't like this like one card interaction or this one, like I don't think that's necessarily a great reason to sort of blow it up. And it's just more the way it's kind of like addressed in general, where there's sort of like a little bit of a lack of transparency, and then like you just sort of have these things popping up like, oh, I heard this, well, I heard that, and it's just doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely back you on that. Like, I don't really care as much about the transparency. I don't care about the why, right? I care about consistency, right? If rules are going to work one way, fine. Then if they're going to revamp the LGR, if they're going to do all that stuff, great, do it. Like, we'll UFS players will adapt to whatever gets thrown in front of them. Historically, we've been pretty good at doing that, right? And card gamers in general, like Magic got a giant rules revamp like halfway through its history. Players said, okay, cool, let's figure out.
It's like 4, yeah.
It's had a bunch, yeah. And players have moved on, and the game's still alive, and it's still fine. I don't see why UFS wouldn't be any different. But yeah, just like you were saying, like doing it piecemeal, like, oh, we're going to rule this way at this tournament, so that's how it is from here on out. Like, that's garbage. Like,
yeah.
No.
So can I fill in a little bit on the reversal thing at Nationals, because I think for me that was a big story. So it started with the Street Fighter starter decks, turbo decks, which had a very peculiar reversal keyword text in them that was different from the LGR, and said, look at the full rules for more details on how this works. And at Nationals, after deck list had been submitted during the players' meeting before singles, Jason announced there will be a rules change enforced at this tournament. We will be using the Street Fighter Turbo deck reversal keyword, which has it's a play the card cost to play the card. So if you want to play reversal, you have to make the control check, succeed the control check, and then I asked like 17 questions to him in the players' meeting. And they said, does anyone have any questions on how this works? And like, what about X, Y, and Z and A, B, C, D, E, F, G? And basically, you play it basically acts like an action card. So when you finish playing the attack, you respond to it to either abilities that cancel abilities or abilities that respond to attacks. And if the keyword didn't get negated, then you start resolving it. But the card doesn't go to the card pool in between here, and it just goes from your hand to the transitional zone to the card pool, where the old keyword, the old reversal, added to your card pool, then you played it from your card pool, it went back to transition zone, back to the card pool. And so it would trigger diplomatic, and importantly to several people in the tournament in singles, it would run into Showoken's restriction that cards can't leave your card pool. So if you played Showoken before this tournament, your attacks all became safe because your opponent's cards can't leave their card pool after the cost is paid for reversal. And these players just got completely screwed. And we still don't have an actual LGR that explains in detail how you actually go through that process. For me, the big thing is that I want like the rule, like if someone wants to ask these rules questions, they should be able to figure the answers out themselves from the documents we have. And there just isn't any amount of information that two equally informed on opposite sides of the country would come to the same answers. And that's an ongoing hole in the rules. Hopefully we get a new LGR around the time Cowboy Bebop drops.
We're supposed to. That's the plan that I've been hearing. Thankfully, I know that we'll kind of bounce to the new LGR. I guess one of the positives from Jasco's end was the hiring of Ryan Pham. He's supposed to be the rules guy. So from what I've heard, he's also the head travel judge. From I guess I've seen he's traveled to more PTCs than I think Kevin has this year. So he's at least on par with Kevin. but he came out to Rockford.
I don't
know,
count. But.
He did a pretty good job in Rockford. There was a couple mistakes, but it's gonna happen. Like you said, there's always going to be human error, player, judge error. But I think for the most part, I think he's been cleaning up the LGR. It's what he's been working on, from what I've heard. So we're supposed to be getting a new one with Bebop coming out. So
yeah, so Ryan Pham's a great story from this year. He actually started playing, I think, sometime last year. I know I played him in Reno.
Yep, Gen Con.
Maybe, yeah. Did he win a PT? Did he win one of those Cali PTCs with Ryu?
No, he topped. He topped. Yeah,
with his very unique Ryu list, and then I got to play him in the Ryu mirror in Reno PTC last year. This year, he showed up to San Antonio and won it with Shane's Athena deck. I was playing the first iteration of the Silent Assassin deck we saw. The first iteration we saw this year. It's been played in the distant past, I guess. But then he got hired by Jasper Games not too long after that, and the kind of the material public things we've seen is a rules FAQ page that explains how some of the gnarlier interactions, like what lies ahead versus throws, for instance, how those can be resolved how those are understood, like how you should understand that those abilities work, because it's often kind of unclear if you just read the rules. Questions like, is this a rules effect or an immediate effect? Well, like what do layers mean? Those kind of things. Very hard to kind of figure out just by reading the rules document and putting it together yourself. So that's been one big step up from the past, where we just had the rules Q&A forum that was a mess and basically unsearchable. Not easy to read or understand, even in the best cases. Even when there was only one. Now we just have an authoritative source for the questions that are currently answered there. So that's a great step up.
Now going back to, let's say, Worlds, with the before, I think it was before Worlds when Rob debuted the Zoe deck.
Yeah.
In Atlanta, and then there wasn't a whole lot of buzz about her. Well, we knew she was good going from Blood Omen. Spoilers.
I think we should ask Dave Wagner about his opinion on that Zoe deck.
But it was really the first time we saw her.
I did see a lot of that deck, yes.
And then like all of a sudden, Rob's playing this. How many attacks? It was like 24, 25 attacks, something like that.
31.
Okay, whatever.
I remember it was above 30.
Okay, so going into Worlds, everyone knew she was a big problem. Dimitri was a problem. He's just unfun to play against. And Wheel was another issue.
So I think there were kind of three sort of big decks in the public eye before Worlds. There was Dimitri, which was a life throw deck. Flipped the best card in your staging area every turn, gained a ton of life, reduced a ton of damage, had Summer Heat available, I think. Right? That was still legal?
No, I don't think it was legal.
Okay.
Then.
Yeah, it got banned sometime.
Right beforehand.
I think it got banned right after Nats last year.
Yeah, it got banned with Ram.
Yeah, that sounds right. Okay.
In the Purge.
Yeah. Man. Anyway, but Dimitri was still highly regarded, still generally, very frustrating to play against, had a ton of negation available, a light symbol. And there was also the Wheel and Steel Yamato Man deck that could also be a few other things, which was a all-symbol weapons deck that played Seal Resurrection on top of Scorch Wheel, which was the only non-weapon in the deck, but it ignored progressive difficulty when you played it. It was just an aggressive deck that played attacks that ignored progressive difficulty, so if it hard-checked 5s, it never had to commit any foundations, and it could throw its staging area at you and beat you down. Hard to stop, kind of resilient, got to do some card draw, long game type stuff with the right draws. And then the 31 attack Zoe deck was definitely the big elephant in the room, so to speak, going into Worlds.
Yeah, that was like the unholy trinity, I guess you could say. And you had like, was Psyche a thing at that point?
Yes.
I
did some like deck list tournament top 8 reviews this morning, and I won the Las Vegas PDC that premiered the season with Psyche, but it was a very different build. It was much worse than what we came up with in the year. Got refined a lot, but there was a Zoe in the top 8 of that event as well that was flying him out of Spirit Cowboy Battery Delta Kick with like a normal attack count, a lot of like techie pieces, like it had 4 answers to no one.
Yeah, it wasn't like the full-on
veterans.
blitz deck.
Yeah,
So-
it was kind of like, I'm going to be a resilient, like, beatdown deck that's going to be sort of medium speed, fair UFS, but, like, high difficulty, like, loopy attack.
Yeah,
Like,
just generates a ton of value out of her abilities
Yeah.
instead of just like, oh, cool, I can just throw quadruple gravity hold at you and kill you.
yeah, but then Rob
So-
really showed the world. So Zoe's form isn't just like a fun. It's not just fun in games. It's actually -2 progressive difficulty, and with -2 progressive difficulty and the water attack lineup that was available,
Pretty good.
you can
Yeah.
play 5 attacks a turn with no foundations guaranteed.
On turn
Yep.
2, very often. Yeah. Yep.
I mean,
No,
I'm pretty sure Tom Gordon actually has played people have played 5 attacks on rolling 3s and done it on 1. It can happen.
I mean, I was doing that. Like, I played pretty much, I wouldn't say Rob's list, but pretty close to it at was it Nationals or Worlds? I can't remember which tournament.
Yeah,
it was.
Worlds was in May with Zoe.
Yeah, so
And
it
there
would have
were
been
like
Worlds.
9 Zoes, I think.
And there was like a contingent of us that were basically playing her to prove a point. Like, I went into a direct diversity fight with one of my teammates because it's like, I don't really have a dog in this fight, but yeah, let's see if we can get this character banned, and we did. So.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, because
like-
the fallout from that was Zoe was gone, Dimitri was gone,
Mhm.
Wheel
Gravity.
Hold,
Scorchwheel got banned,
Scorchwheel
Gravity
got
Hold got
banned.
banned.
Yep.
And
Mhm.
Strumwall.
Oh, and Sturmwaffle. Yeah.
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 So,
I remember 5 bans. And,
Yeah.
yeah, pretty much all the big power cards that were around in the format at that point got chopped. And honestly,
Except
like,
for Fires and Dragons.
Except for Spires and Dragons.
Eric.
I'm not gonna get into that card. I think like that card's really good. I don't think it's ban worthy good, but that's a whole different discussion. Yeah, Poll is really good too.
Not
but yeah,
the kind of card you ban without
No.
a real reason.
you got to be real careful banning that card. But no, and honestly, I think after those bannings hit, like the format's been in a pretty good place. Like we had a very diverse nationals.
Yep.
We had and like we'll see. We'll segue into Bebop here,
Yep.
I guess.
Yeah, we can do that.
But, yeah, like so. But before we hit Bebop, and I'm sure most of the people that are watching this, and obviously you guys, because we've talked about it ad nauseum, have seen all the spoilers that have hit, and like it's a pretty clear jump in average power per card.
Yep.
Right. I don't think that's necessary. Like the more I've looked at it, right? Like I had the same reaction that a lot of people have had the first time seeing them. Some of these cards was just like, holy shit! Like, what is going? Like, what crazy, night like jet fueled UFS are we looking at right now? And like the more I've looked at it, it's okay. Is my mental response to this like, holy crap, this stuff is overpowered, or has it been like the last couple of sets have been so underwhelming compared to other stuff that was currently in the format that like seeing stuff that's on the same level as characters like Felicia, like your formats, like your format staples right now, right?
Mhm.
Like, is that okay? Like, are we pushing that to? Okay, I'll slightly segue here. I had a big problem with the last 2 sets because barring like one character, and maybe this is just me personally, and I'm not going to put Platinum in here because I don't consider that a full set, but right. So the 2 sets prior to that, like there were almost no characters that I looked at and I was like, I'm excited to build this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like it just wasn't a thing. It was like, this is underpowered, this is underpowered, this is underpowered, or this works in very narrow scenarios where if you hit all of the upside on that character, it's fantastic, but like your average UFS game with that character is not going to be great. Like, and now you look at these Bebop characters and I'm like, I could build Vicious, I could build Spike, I could build Adenine, I could, all of these characters that have been previewed, I would feel relatively comfortable taking to a tournament with like a somewhat refined build and having that character in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
Do I think that's a good thing? Yes, I think that end of it is a good thing. Now, as far as the exact power level of this stuff, I think it's a little bit too early to make a judgment call. Like, obviously, the big outlier card here that has gotten everybody up in arms is Phase Action, right?
Yeah,
and,
Gateway. Yeah.
Yeah, Fae Hammer, Gateway,
Fae
whatever you want
Hammer,
to call
yeah.
it, right? So,
Yeah.
like, and a lot of people, justifiably so, and myself included, have taken one look at that card and going like, why did you reprint Absurd Strength? Like, what's going on? Like, how did we get to this point in UFS? Like, you printed Absurd Strength essentially with, instead of Momentum Hate on the back end of it, you have part of Rejection or part of Backflip, which was like two crazy strong defensive tools like way back in the day in UFS's history. And the more I looked at it, like the defensive end of that card is insane no matter what, right? Like just a straight up -5 is ridiculous. Like that's super good. However, if you look at historical context as to where like the format was when Absurd Strength was a card, right? You had these crazy ways to push damage through. You had Blood Runs True, you had Unrequited Love, you had check hacks galore in Akuma, you had
Kung Fu Training.
You had Kung Fu Training, you had +6 speed on a stick, like all over the place in the format, right? And
it just sounds nuts, man.
Yeah, so like, or you could just gut people's hands, or there were like a billion ways to push that card through. You don't have that with the consistency that like Summer of Evil UFS 2008 era, which is basically what it was. Like the reason, one of the big reasons that card worked so well is because it was really easy to defend it. You had Addy Syndicates, you had Higher Caliber, you had all of these ways that guaranteed that when you played this card, you were getting that full 6 or 7 damage out of it. You don't really have that now. So do I think that card's going to make a big impact? Yeah. Like you can't ignore the raw power of like 6 damage on a stick, right? Like on a 2 difficulty card that clears itself. Like that's crazy. But the bigger difference is going to be you have to set it up now.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't just guarantee, you play this card and because you have played it and you know what your opponent's capable or not capable of doing, like you're going to get full value out of it. Like it's going to be harder to do. I'm not saying it's going to be impossible because that's not correct at all. Like you're going to have games where you're playing as Yamato Man and you go, cool, I ripped Trident double hammer and my opponent doesn't have an answer on the board and they don't have Revoke in their hand and they just die turn 2, right? Like because it's 20 plus damage on a stick. But he can do that already now with his own action and that card, and I don't know.
Nobody's built that,
and nobody's playing that. So
I don't know if Trident Yamato Madashi is a well-known combo.
No, but it's basically the same thing, right?
It's basically the same thing.
Yeah, it's pretty damn close. So again,
well, it is only Trident that works with.
Yeah,
like, that's the only big speed bump like that.
Sure. So yeah, like. But do I think that's a card that we as a community are going to have to keep an eye on? Absolutely. Like it's
anyone playing a 7-hand size character is going to have to think really hard before blocking an attack on turn 2.
Yeah.
Because if you block and you check a 3 and you tap out, you can die.
You might just die. Yeah, you might just die. And like 7-handers have had that issue in this format now for a while for a couple of different reasons. Like playing a 7-hander against even like Huitzel at the moment is just terrifying. It's like, okay, like I have 18 to 20-ish life, maybe if I'm lucky, or I'm not Spike, but we'll get into that in a minute. Like facing down that character is horrifying. Like you're going to get shield rammed to death, and there's very little you can do about it. So as a set, like if you want to maximize the advantage you get out of that extra card in your hand, like you have to build very defensively now. And right now you have to do that in UFS anyway as a 7-hand size character. So this just exacerbates that some.
Yeah, I definitely think that like playing 7-handers now and recently in general, you really have to be ready not only to build a good staging area to be able to play defense like very reliably, very consistently, but you also really have to have some number of tools where you can defend yourself without blocking and also defend yourself from throws and from attacks that are like pseudo unblockable like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I've sided up to like 7-10 pieces of throw hit in most of my attacks. And so like, yeah, Huitzel, come at me, Huitzel. Oh, your attack's a throw? Well, leave shield.
Sure.
Don't care.
Yep. So yeah, like
you just have to be ready for that stuff.
You have to be ready for it.
It's this is going to be a whole new dimension of being ready for it. Like I think Gateway Shuttle's at a very high power level. And so you have to have either increasingly specific answers like deliverance to it, or you have to have just like really good cards somehow or another.
Going back on what Dave touched on with the characters, I was chatting with Shane today as a day of recording, and at least not publicly, they haven't acknowledged, well, technically it is now, if it's going to be public knowledge, is that they feel that the characters in Blood Omen and in Street Fighter are not up to par to what they want UFS to be. They want all characters, non-champ card characters, to be A tier, and champ card characters to be B tier, is what they want. Because
to be honest, that's a terrible idea.
I'd rather have every character. I'd rather have every character be playable. It doesn't matter what tier they're on. I want everyone to be playable. So, and technically A tier and B tier are still playable. It's just you may have to work a little harder. But the reason why it seems like the Bebop cards, the characters specifically like Mad Pro today, they just seem so outrageously powerful compared to like Sasha or Gabrick 2 or something like that. When if you take a look at Battle for Power characters like Yamato, Guile, you could probably try to throw base in there too.
You can throw base in
there. They're kind of similar. Like the power level's a little. It may not be as high as a Bebop, but it's just that tier right below Bebop. Those three guys. If you think about it.
I think those examples you made of the Battle for Power characters are pretty much on par with what we're seeing out of the Bebop characters. Honestly, like is Spike a little bit nuts?
Well, if you think about him though, like he's 724, but he's pretty vanilla. Like his abilities, sure, yeah, he gets speed on a stick, and I know
delicious vanilla.
Maybe it's like vanilla bean or French vanilla. But if you think about it though, he doesn't have he doesn't have like an Athena enhance, or even Vicious has more. Vicious has more flavor.
Compare Spike to Lilith, right? Like they both give a bunch of free speed on offense, but now Lilith can get a huge benefit if she hits you for 3. Like I've seen decks that played Cowboy Battery and Spider Suplex. I hope you can full block these things, or you're gonna take it directly. Because if not, I'm gonna pick up my freaking insane 5 diff and play it again. She's gonna play a Mary turn on you and pick that up. That's 5 free damage. You can't stop that.
So I think the interesting thing with Spike is going to be what he does when the Team Psycho Soldier support rotates, right? Because right now, like out the gate, like that's the obvious build, right? Is like him with Team Psycho Soldier stuff is clearly going to be at least something to consider. But if you take that out, like there's not a lot out there that synergizes with what he's trying to do. So he's just kind of generically good, and that's fine. Like there's nothing wrong with taking a generically good character, slapping a really good deck on top of it, and winning a tournament. If you look at like Phil Birch's last tournament win, that's exactly what he did. He took
the Dawson that Swiss champs nationals was just like, I mean, I've asked some people, do you think Dawson's good? They're like, sure, but he's just really boring. He doesn't do anything. But like he's really good fundamentals. I actually think he's really fun to play. Yeah,
he's just a solid character, and I think Spike's in that vein. Like, do I think 24 life might have been a little bit excessive? Maybe they could probably could have chopped him to like 22, and he'd still be perfectly
funny thing about that, Dave, is that's what Shane said, that he started out as a 722 and they bumped him up 2 health for I don't know why, but whatever. It is what it is. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But if you look at it though, like he has almost like a direct counter in Vicious, because if he has nothing to flip, he's not getting speed or speed reduction. So, Spike isn't. So if you can flip his board, pretty quickly, he can't push stuff through at least.
And Vicious typhooning Spike is going to be a thing that happens
hilarious
in the format.
You better go buy your Mexican typhoons now, kids, at Rochester CCG. Pick those up.
Value jump.
I think the things that fight back against Spike, I think it's really cool how there are, like, you can just take his pace down stuff and just start playing push the limit and just shove it, put more flips into him, take away all of his staging error, make him just into a vanilla.
Yep.
With very little staging error, very little character ability, all that. Or you can start hating on his face downs. Like if you play Conqueror of Night and Day, blow up his face downs.
Was it Rook Takes Pawn does the same thing too?
Rook Takes Pawn.
Yeah, Rook Takes Pawn.
That card. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't
Somersault kick.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
I am trying very hard to not be a, oh my God, the sky is falling knee-jerk reaction to this whole set, right? Because and anytime we see a power spike like this, right, like the first reaction is, well, what the fuck is going on? But we haven't, like, granted, we haven't seen the whole spoiler yet. We've only seen we haven't even seen like a fifth of it. If my math is even remotely correct, which I'm from Atlanta, so it's probably not. But anyway, so I'm trying to keep an open mind with where the design is going. I like seeing more competitively viable stuff, right? And I think even Piero, who we saw today, like on the surface, like if you look at pure upside on that character, he's crazy, right? Like all my stuff's unblockable. Like, well, how hard is that to set up? Like, can you? Is there ways to do it? Sure. Like he gets Heidi's support, he gets some other character support that can help, but like. That's not a guarantee at any point in the game that you're going to be able to pull off stacking 3 other copies of him with like a lot of consistency and being able to kill them probably on the following turn, right? Because the minute you do that, your opponent is gonna go in to try to kill you, and if you've
and they know that having cards in their hand is gonna do them any good too,
right? So there is a point where it's like, okay, I've got my combo online. How much damage can I do? Oh crap, I don't have enough to kill them. But I've gotten rid of all of my plus-o mid blocks on my deck that are otherwise doing nothing. I don't know. I think he's going to be really interesting. Like I think he's going to be like Heidi, honestly. Like borrows a lot of support from that character, right? And you'll have games where like when Heidi combos off on 2 and just murders you, like, okay, cool. Like sometimes that happens, but that's not necessarily the most consistent thing on the planet. And I think this is actually going to be less consistent than Heidi because you still have to run attacks, right?
Yeah.
You don't have the buffer that Heidi gets where all of your checks are 5s or better. So you can play this ridiculous level of defense and just survive long enough to combo out. Like I think he's going to be a little bit tougher to optimize compared to that character. And Heidi's already pretty tough to optimize to begin with. I don't know.
I think as a whole so far, I had the same. I wasn't around the absurd strength era of UFS, so I don't know the horror story. So I'm living through you veterans, you know. And
that's fair.
And the more I talked with Rob on our behind the scenes on our first show about. We talked about Bebop and stuff, and the more I talk about it, the more I come back from the ledge, I think, is what the analogy I'm trying to say is. Because, like, it's like, oh, man, absurd strength. And it's just like, okay, well, I never got to play that card, so I don't know the horror stories. But it's like, it's an enhance. You can cancel it. You know, if you're a good UFS deck builder, you put defense in your deck and stuff like that. The only thing I'm upset about is that the Tomahawk Man can just run you over on turn 1 with it, and that's the only thing that's why I posted that stuff on Facebook. I was like
vaguely terrifying.
I was like, I don't really I hate that character to begin with. So we can just please ban that character now. I don't have to worry about it. Jesse will cry, and then we'll just move on. You know. So
I'm pretty sure I'm just gonna put the Songs of Silence on on repeat on Spotify on my phone and just listen to that every time I see a Gateway Shuffle in play. Or at least Silver Tomahawks. I've never checked a 5 against that thing in my entire life.
I think that's a perfectly reasonable response. Yeah.
Because you can just partial it from now on. I guess that's the whatever, but
just partial your opponent's 17 damage attack with one. That sounds like a great plan.
Hey, if you're playing Spike, you still got close to like 18 health left, so you're fine. You're fine, man. But I think because I was talking again with Shane, because I was talking to him about Perot, and it seems like this is going to be the trend for characters going forward, is that the power level on the characters will be like a Bebop or the Trinity from, let's say, Battle for Power, that type of, they're going to want, they know they're not 100% of the set will be viable. They're always shooting for 100, obviously, but they want at least 90% of the set to see play. Like the card they showed today, the Perot card.
Imagine you print Mad Perot with no character stacking support whatsoever, right? That character is not remotely viable. He basically has he has this big, exciting, insane ability that will never happen in a competitive match. It'll happen once in a 10-round tournament or something. And I think it's fine to print that character, though. And I think that this idea that you need to have 100% penetration of tournament playable cards, that's just, I think that's a misguided perception about how you should run your game. Because, and what happens, there's a couple things that happen then downstream of that. So one of them is that if all your cards are equally good, it doesn't matter which ones you play. You just pick pick whichever ones you think are good and just throw them in a deck, and you're not going to make mistakes that are that bad. And that's not a great feeling. Like that, it doesn't matter how you build your deck. Obviously, they're still building a lot of synergy into their sets, so I think that's not as big of a concern. But and I think the bigger problem though is that you can never be 100% accurate, right? There's always error bars on your power level. Like you try to make everything a 5 out of 10, you're going to get 3s, you're going to get 7s, you're going to get 8s. Sometimes you're going to get 8s and 2s rarely. But if you try to make everything a 7 or 8 out of 10, like if Fei is like your completely balanced, absolute middle card, you're going to make cards that are much more powerful than that rarely. And like in Blood Omen, like maybe Cannonade and Cowboy Bebop were the outliers that were the most powerful cards in the set. Maybe in Street Fighter it's Prepare to Fight. And, these are different extremes of power. Like these are offensive attacks that are really good and defensive actions that are really good. But if you try to make if you try to scale up the power level, you're going to make those mistakes worse. And you might, in an absolute sense, like if Cannonade were a mistake and like that card were too good, well, it's still a 5 difficulty, 2 check, no block attack that's just does a ton of damage and helps you put together a kill string in the late game when you're low on resources, when you have a ton of foundations and a ton of ability to make attacks land. But if you screw up a card I was killing people with critical split on turn 1 at Worlds, and that deck didn't even make a blip, right? Yeah. Like, if you keep scaling up the power level on top of Blood Omen and you make an Ulrich character with critical split 2-dot and +5 to your check to keep up with generic kind of maybe generic's not quite the word, but like kind of less exciting characters like base, less dramatic power levels. Now you're gunning to have to ban that and have a miserable 2 months as everyone gets murdered by critical split 2 on turn 0. Right.
I think in that vein, I think it's okay to sort of like dial up the power level a little bit, like across everything. It's as long, like you just have to be prepared to actually just ban stuff as it like becomes obviously broken. I think that's sort of been a complaint about some cards is that they might wait a little too long. They're kind of like, oh, this is all right. This is not like a huge deal. And then like they'll have like a major or they have like
nine Zoes show up. Zoe's fine.
And they're like, oh, like that mature deck, they banned her because UK Nationals is coming up. Although, they would have just waited for her to rotate, which isn't the end of I mean, if she takes down some PTCs, I guess it's not a big deal, but I think they just didn't want that deck to win cardboard. But
I don't think that's cardboard.
That's it. I mean, Natali did, so the UK did. So, I don't...
Hey, they're not free.
No,
I don't care what you're free.
They're not.
I tease because I love those guys.
I mean, it's a funny coincidence that Garrett and I happen to both go undefeated, drawing to each other and beating literally everyone else in the room. But that's far from the only outcome that could have happened.
Yeah, that's fair.
I lost over there some, so
I mean, that's because you're free, but
yeah, there you go. He lost his crutch, man. He doesn't know what to do now.
His crutch is guts, man, though.
Yeah, that's fair.
I feel like the biggest difference from Bebop and those other sets, because the non-character cards have been steadily increasing in power. If you look at like some of the stuff, if you look at Blood Omen, there was a little bit of a downturn, I think, in Street Fighter. I think Street Fighter in general was just a low power set. And I think people were sort of disappointed in that. It seemed like it was like a big license, and then you got the cards, and they were like, there's some good characters, and there's some great cards. But as a whole, it just seemed like a lot of stuff that you were like, what is this?
Like, yeah, there's a lot of in that set.
Bebop, on the other hand, pretty much everything I've seen out of Bebop is like interesting. It gets your wheels turning. You're like, well, how can I like leverage this? Like, how can I combine this with like those? Right now, for me, the thing I'm more worried about than the effects is like some of the numbers. Like the numbers seem high, like the speeds, the damages. just pumps, whatever. And I think those are different than what we've been seeing. But I think part of that is, like they said, that the characters from the previous sets just haven't been as good as some of the other characters you see. I think it'll be interesting going forward. I'm in that same boat of where the more I've looked at it, the more I'm taking kind of a wait and see approach. I think that this set is obviously better than Street Fighter for sure, and most of Blood Omen. Obviously in the character department and to a degree in like the non-character. So I
think
we'll just have to see where it goes.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah. So I kind of have. So I know there was a meme posted this morning about power creep, as we got a new 4 difficulty 3-check reversal that adds a character to your hand that's much better than an old one.
And nobody played.
No one played. Exactly.
Nobody played it, and so like when you just make upgrades to cards, like I think there's actually 2 cards I'm thinking of specifically right now: Fei and Haunted by Loss. And these cards are just 2 spam speed redux cards that help you stay alive on defense when you have to pass blocks. But I think they're both much better than tools we've ever really had in standard in that slot. They're both actually better than Girl Like Any Other, which was like almost widely reviled by the time it left standard with the first Red Horizon rotation for shutting down offenses so well and being so frustrating to get through, because it was a 1 difficulty foundation that counted for 3 foundations when you're passing blocks. And I'm not so much worried that, I mean, there is a concern that people are going to start dying on turn 1, that like we're going to get mature, like they're going to accidentally print another mature 59 deck that plays all attacks and kills people on 1, or that Tomahawk Man is going to blow people up on 1. But I think there's a more subtle kind of power creep that I think we're very likely going through, which is just where if you take a deck that doesn't really do anything, and obviously that's a bad deck, right? But if you build a deck that isn't focused, isn't optimized, isn't doing like what it's supposed to be doing around whatever synergy it's built, whatever synergies are available to it. But if you just build a generic deck, how badly is it going to get crushed by everything it plays against? And we're seeing more powerful defensive tools at the same time we're seeing more powerful offensive tools. And like if you need Fei and Haunted by Loss to stay alive against Sheepman or something, that's still a dangerous form of power creep, even if like games are still going to turn 4, and even if tournament matches are still interesting and have a bunch of meaningful decisions on both sides. And that's kind of we've definitely zigzagged on this kind of stuff. Like we used to have Page to Protect in standard, and that card's insane. Like completely, utterly, undeniably absurd, especially when you have 5 keywords on some cards.
That was pretty good.
Yeah. Like we had meaningful UFS with Ultimate Team Legal and like Harnessing Chaos. So there's definitely a lot of space that they can turn up the power level without getting too insane. But what's really going to count is if Mortal Kombat comes out and it's actually only as good as Bebop is, or we're all crapping our pants about Piero and Ed at a 9 today, and then the set comes out and we're like, yeah, actually we were about right, but this is just the new normal. But then Mortal Kombat comes out and here's a new set of stackers that are even more powerful than these guys. Or here's a life loss character that starts at 635.
Yeah. So and I can't really say it any better than Brobrick did. Like if Bebop is the new normal, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
As long as it's consistent. Right?
Yeah.
Like because again, I think we can all agree, as we've reiterated a couple times here, like the number of competitively viable characters out of the last couple sets has been kind of low. And that's why people were gravitating towards either champ cards, or they were gravitating towards KOF characters, or like early Mega Man stuff, so on and so forth, because there just wasn't a lot of meat there. Like the platinum characters, most of them are pretty good.
Yeah.
Like I've put people in the ground with Sheepman. I've gotten my ass kicked by Sheepman. Like there's a couple other ones like Plant Man is really interesting and maybe like weirdly nuanced and kind of more difficult to build, but like the upside on that character is crazy good. Like you get the most ridiculous toolboxing out of that guy that I've seen in a long time.
Of 1 to 5 stars, how hard is Plant Man?
Probably like a 5.5.
Yeah, dude.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Like just because you have to figure out a way to kill people. That's the hardest thing, I think.
Yeah.
So you can toolbox all day and that's great, but like you still got to end games.
Yeah.
But like, and yeah, like I obviously like Huitzel's made an impact right out the gate. Like Stone Man is this ridiculous wall that is obnoxious. And,
I need to play some Stone Man.
Dude, that guy is the most long. Like that's like a 50+ life character. It's
Yeah, it is.
So yeah, like and if Platinum was kind of our taste of the power level that they're aiming at with Bebop, then I think that's fine. Like if that's where UFS is going to go down the road, and like the last couple sets were just kind of like a bump in the road, okay, like great, but don't keep pushing it up and up and up and up and up and up to the point where like I feel like I've made a couple $100 investment in a set going forward, and now almost everything I have out of it, even stuff that was good at the time, is just invalidated, right? Like,
yeah.
If I'm looking to play like Cammy, for example, right? Like Cammy is one of those like B+ tier characters. When she hits, she's ridiculous. She feels super broken, right? But you got to work pretty hard to get there. And her game plan is relatively easy to disrupt with a lot of the defensive tools that are out there. If she gets more support coming out of Bebop, great, cool. Maybe I can still make a deck with her work. Like, do I think there's ever really going to be a competitively viable like T-Hawk deck? Probably not, right? But if I've made an investment in a character that was already like, yeah, if I've made an investment, whether it's financially or time or so on and so forth, in a deck that's already like viable, right? That I feel comfortable taking to a tournament, as long as the stuff coming out doesn't 100% invalidate that, then fine, creep the power a little bit, but it's such a slippery slope. You got to be so careful doing that.
I think that if they just hit, if like what you said, Dave, if they hit this plateau of Bebop and then just gradually just keep level, I think we'll be fine. Sure, there may be like an outlier card here or there, a crazy attack or some defensive foundation that's just nuts. Like I can see that. Which leads me to my next point is